Greetings. Is is the Tesla Semi canceled 2.0? The second discussion is Tesla's stock price yesterday was up 25 points, and we're entering what's called a short squeeze zone, and it can be very lucrative if you're positive on Tesla. Now, the third thing that I wanted to cover today is Tesla possibly adopting the process of new vehicle delivery that Daimler, VW, and other major makes are doing related to the delays on some of their vehicles. Greetings, this is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on our channel, please take time to like and subscribe. Your like is actually a big deal because it actually determines the ranking of this video. The third thing I'd like to mention, and we're also on Patreon. We could definitely use your support in that regard. We're in a process of equipment upgrades, and this really makes a difference in that process. I also wanted to note that for those of you who are regular visitors, you'll see hellos coming from around the world on our channel. We have a lot of European and other viewers, and I will say hello, but at the end, only because our other viewers have asked that if they don't see the original podcast, they typically try and come back. And then a final sort of precursor note is this is our Thursday show. We usually show up again for our next show on Sunday, unless something major occurs. Now, the first part of my discussion today is what I call, is the Tesla canceled 2.0? Now, Seeking Alpha suggested that the Semi may have been canceled because it hadn't been seen in a while, and there was not a lot of discussion about how and when it would actually be produced. Some very surprising news was just snuck in there by Elon Musk about the Roadster and the Semi, both of which were scheduled to be delivered in mid to late 2019, have now been slipped to 2020. And I was kind of like, wow, those are some pretty important vehicles, especially the Semi, given the number of people that have reserved them. And I was stunned to see that there had been a change on this without it being a major part of the conversation that occurred. Now, I'm fascinated because is it possible that it's been canceled, either or both vehicles? I mean, it's definitely possible. The fact that they showed a newer version of the Roadster that's white, suggests that they're still in development. I just find it interesting that because the open question is, if we can see them, why is it that we're not able, if you can see and drive them right now, why is it that they can't pull something together to do production by this time next year on either or both? And I think there are several answers to this. The most obvious answer is right now, frankly, Tesla is cash strapped. They can't add any more debt without getting the Model 3, successfully rolling as smooth as how we see the production of the Model S and Model X. The second answer is that what I call beta testing. Thank you. The beta testing problem pops up, which is that there's a phenomenon going on right now where Tesla is actually, to some extent, using first-year production as the beta testing that they've typically been doing. And the implication of this process is basically that it takes longer. So an example is the e-tron from Volvo the e-tron coming from VW's Audi division right now is operating in a 2-year, or there have been 250 of them produced. Those vehicles are now on the road for a year. And once they've had a year worth of on the road, only then, and then all the issues that were identified are fixed, will they then be made available to customers. Now, this is a really smart process because you can identify issues, etc., and fix them well before customers have some exposure to these. and you have a base of data to work with from that. So I bring this up because there's a interesting problem of how Tesla operates, and the fact that when you look at the Model 3 right now, they're getting a lot of cars out onto the street as fast as possible. But we're now starting to see, and from what I can see, the biggest problem they're having is screens that go blank or in other ways do not work. The solution is replacement of these screens that they're doing, but I'm really eager to see Tesla provide Wi-Fi access in the car so that you can send all of the display information that would be on the screen to an iPad or your cell phone that's in the car. And so therefore, if there's a problem with the screen, your backup is actually being able to go to another device, and the Wi-Fi access is there. So I don't think this would be too complex to do, but it's a change that I'd love to see happen from Tesla ASAP, especially for customers who are distant from service areas and might run into this problem. So bottom line is that um, there hasn't been an announcement of a cancellation on the semi and the roadster, but that extra year I definitely think can possibly put a little bit of a doubt element into the conversation of what's going on with those vehicles. The next thing I wanted to jump into is we're entering an area in business that's called squeeze. And what is a short squeeze? Well, what this means is that Tesla is the number one most shorted stock on the New York Stock Exchange and possibly in the world right now. Basically, there are a large number of people that have predicted that the stock price is going to fall dramatically and the company possibly could go into bankruptcy. The issue that's going on right now is that with the announcement of real production numbers and the possibility of getting to 5,000 units a week, um, even if you're a bad company, when you're pulling in, you know, 3 to 500 million dollars a week on a product you're selling, and you have no competition, and you have the possibility of getting to 10,000 units a week, all that cash makes everybody excited, and there are a lot of people willing to lend money to you and support what you're doing if you have those kind of statistics that are going on. And so Tesla is sort of enjoying the fact that there are a lot of people that predicted their demise based on inability to get this production rolling, and those folks are being proven wrong. And what happens in a short squeeze is that if Tesla delivers those numbers, so let's say 5,000 units by the end of June on a weekly basis, that could actually signal a $400 to $500 stock price. So, you know, as you know, the Chinese are talking about building a plant that'll be announced in the next month. And Tesla is planning on that plant coming online in the next 2 years, maybe 2.5 years. And China is planning on that plant starting to produce by the end of next year because they're committed to that project. They're putting up their own money to make it happen, and they want the products that will come out of that factory ASAP. So what they can do and will do and have the money to do is really impressive, and I think that it'll end up adding a lot of sales to the overall Tesla process. So bottom line is that right now, a 29 point or a 10% increase in the value of stock in one day suggests we're in the early parts of a short squeeze, and it's possible that we get a follow through to add another 10 or 15% to the stock price over the next 3 to 5 days in this process, because there are a number of people that have to figure out, is the stock going to keep rising? And if it is, then they need to unwind their position, which means they have to buy the stock and take apart the short they've done. Um, there are some folks that have a heavy tolerance for pain and they won't change, but there are other people that will say, hey, this short idea that or plan that we had is not going to work, so we need to unwind that short. And some of the increase in value in the stock that we just saw were folks, in essence, unwinding their short. So if you're a Tesla fan and owner, I think we're in a big time period for the stock. And if you have a few extra dollars laying around, I think it's a great time to consider purchasing Tesla stock and going from there. Um, the next thing that I wanted to sort of dive into, we've got an ongoing software discussion about what's going on with some of the crashes. And I got with one of my technical consultants, and there's some interesting stuff that's popped up, and it's focused on the fact that um, if you notice the crashes that are currently occurring with AP2, I wanted to encourage you to note the crashes in terms of the police car as well as the fire truck into the back of that truck and not stopping while in autopilot. It turns out that there are some situations where autopilot 2 doesn't work very well, especially um, it might be autopilot 1, but definitely with autopilot 2. And that is that, yes, there's GPS involved in terms of how this process works, but GPS is not accurate enough, so the vehicles are actually running between the white lines on the roadway and using those white lines as a guide for how they operate. So if there's any interruption in that, for example, a large fire truck on the side of the road dealing with an accident might actually leak over that white line and affect what the car is seeing. And so instead of deviating around the vehicle, the white lines being used to guide the vehicle in autopilot might actually cause it to run into those objects. So um, I wanted to note that it's a good idea to sort of understand how and what the cameras are seeing. And it's also a good idea to sort of be able to look around your environment and understand potential issues that can pop up, especially if you're using technology like this. Part of me arriving at this was that we've actually had a few sort of people we're watching that are users talk about the fact that if you're on autopilot and you go through an intersection, the autopilot will get kind of funky on you because the white line markings that it's using aren't available in that situation. So, I wanted to encourage you guys to note that it can be dangerous. I think that, another situation that was suggested that most of us will never see is if you have the white lines and then somebody spills white paint on the roadway, guess what? The guides for what's being used to guide the vehicle have now disappeared. So this could be a situation that results in, craziness or accidents potentially, etc. So it's kind of something that you might want to be mindful of as well. The final thing that I, kind of wanted to cover today is the fact that there's a process of vehicle rollout that Daimler and VW and others have done. I kind of described the e-tron being 250 of them being put on the road. Um, Tesla has a habit of trying to build and put as many vehicles on the road as fast as possible. This is advantageous because obviously you're first to market, but it's a nightmare because there's a whole bunch of repair work that's going to need to be done out there. So even though it's bad news that the truck and roadster are being pushed into the 2020 time period, I think this actually gives an opportunity for them to get a lot of bugs worked out before there are hundreds or thousands of these vehicles on the roads. And then you have some implications regarded to crashes or breakdowns, et cetera, that end up costing a lot of money to the company on the back end. Um, in the case of Daimler, who I've been watching closely, they had an initial iteration of electric vehicles and then trucks that they ran for actually 5 years. They're now in a 3-year, 130 vehicle test zone. There are 150 vehicles that are electric that are out there test zone for their smaller Class 6 trucks, and they have at least 50 trucks at the Class 7 level that are on a 1 to 2 year in customer hands to see how they work out and address the bugs period. So usually when you have expensive vehicles that with people's lives on the line, there's a 1 to 2 year period that they're out there being tested aggressively. We are at the 1 year mark right now with the semi and actually the roadster, but the one extra year of testing and making sure everything is right isn't a bad idea. And frankly, there isn't a battery between the use of the battery packs to address some of the power products that Tesla's producing, combined with the 400,000 people that are in line and the extra 400,000 people behind them on the Model 3, there actually isn't the battery capacity right now to address the demand that would come from all the products that Tesla's actually producing. So I actually think it's great that they're delaying this even though I think it's going to have revenue and maybe ticked off customers. But when you have a monopoly, the fact that a few ticked off customers are out there, not a big deal. Um, any rate, I usually try to start winding down. We're at about a 15-minute mark. Usually try to start winding down at this point. Um, I am excited that Tesla's not going to go bankrupt. Elon Musk is good for his word because he's been buying the stock sub 300 and now it's above 300. Our sort of next milestone is the 5,000 units of production. Um, I hope you found the how the camera eyes on the cars are viewing things and things to be noteworthy if you're in autopilot mode and there are significant gaps or breaks in those white lines. It could definitely affect how well the car performs. Um, Wanted to say good morning to my friends in Sweden and thank you for the comment regarding camera orientation. I'm shooting from a different spot today as a kind of an experiment. Um, uh, Greetings, Sweli, from South Africa. Good to see you. Enough respect there in Sweden. Hey, I'm looking forward to pictures you might send from Sweden in terms of Tesla's interesting situations that we can post on our Tesla Fan Insight on YouTube. Um, I think that's about all that I wanted to cover today. Um, I wanted to. This is kind of random, but I always like to include stuff that I've seen that I find fascinating. So, I live in the greater Washington D.C. area, and so we're kind of splitting the difference between Virginia, Maryland, and then Washington D.C. Speed cameras have become very common now as a way to both gain revenue and improve how people are driving. I wanted to note to you that I got snagged in a speed camera situation that I think is really interesting, which is because people know where the speed cameras are, the revenue is declining. So the smart people with the speed cameras have come up with a new technique that I don't want you guys get to snagged on, which is that you want to make sure you stop your wheels before the white line, even if you're making a legal right turn. Because the snag that I got is that if you don't stop before the white line and then you pull up to make your right turn, that's not a legal stop and turn. And they do have the cameras calibrated to take pictures of your vehicle on a timestamp basis to introduce you to a small ticket related to the fact that it was a legal right turn, but you didn't stop before the white line. So I just wanted to note it to you guys that there's some smart people that work for these companies and they're generating new revenue with the process I just described, and you should be mindful of that. At any rate, um, that's about it in terms of what I wanted to cover today. Please take time to like because it definitely impacts us greatly if you do. We do put a couple of ads in and would appreciate 5 to 8 seconds of viewing would really make a difference in terms of contributing to the success of the channel and our ability to produce material. Any and all comments we love to respond to. And any suggestions, like as you can see, there are friends that are saying, look into the camera or whatever. Any suggestions you have, we really appreciate because we want to do a better job and make sure the quality of execution is better. And so any and all of it is appreciated. I usually try to check out in different languages. So first German, tschüss, mach's gut. French, au revoir, tout à l'heure. Hebrew, choda hafez. Farvel in Dutch, I'm told. Uh, Lahit Road, I guess, is Hebrew already done. Hoda Hafez, Farsi. In Jamaica, we say, Nuff respect wa good man. I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks for taking time out. Look forward to stock price of Tesla FS. Thanks for saying hello from Deutschland. Um, uh, wow, interesting. Hey, Jerry, thanks for the hello. And look forward to any and all comments on what we covered today. I hope you guys are able to make some money as a short squeeze happens based on being dedicated viewers of Tesla. I'm just going to take you out nature style here in the greater Washington, D.C. area at Dallas Airport. Hey, I agree on the 350 stock. I'm thinking 400.